Broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe. Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the Cindy Cochran Show, and I'm Cindy Cochran, so that makes it okay. And I am just so happy to be here, and I'm so glad you guys decided to join us. And you that are listening on 106.1 and 104.5 for the amount of time that you have to listen to us. But you'll only be, let's see, it's probably about a 30-minute drive that they can listen to us, and then they're out. Then it goes to a Spanish station. I think in the Woodlands somewhere it turns to a Spanish station. And I kept going, what did Richard just do? Is someone there speaking Spanish? I was like so confused the first time I was listening to the channel. But it's cool because we're on radio in the Montgomery County area, and that we've got so many platforms that we're on. You just can't miss us. And so this is live on YouTube right now. So everybody that has a computer or that has their phone on that can watch, YouTube, you can see it live. And then it'll be on there recorded immediately, like almost immediately after we finish and say goodbye. It comes up on YouTube as recorded. It's so perfect for a lot of family members that didn't get to see it. So I'm hoping you guys will, watch that. Now, I put on my Facebook about who my guest was going to be today, and Yikes, that I've had people, commenting and saying that the picture I put up of this person was looked like she was really tough and really mean and really rough. But I found out what it is. It was a publicity picture for a movie that she did. She and her husband did, and a short movie. It wasn't a full length. I don't think it was in the Grand or anything, but it was a movie, right? And so we're gonna talk about that because one person said she looks like she's really ticked off, and then I had to say, well, okay, here she really is, and then I showed the other picture of how beautiful she is. She's so sweet. This is the sweetest lady you ever want to meet. So gentle. I just can't imagine the transition that happened between when she was an undercover officer and when she was driving alone at night, after night, in her police car in North Shepherd. And of course, that was back in the 1950s. No, that was before it was too scary to be. I'm sure it was always scary at North Shepherd, always. But she was doing that, and then she went into narcotics, and there were other women that could have gone undercover. They were female officers that could have gone undercover. They were qualified to go undercover, but they hadn't. And when she came in, she did do undercover work, and those two women left, and so she was there for a while by herself. But women started coming in, and so it was like groundbreaking, I think, for you to do what you did and for them to be able to use you. Now, see, what's funny to me is knowing HPD, knowing Houston. I lived in Houston like all my life, and met so many people working at Channel 13. All those people would come in, and I'd go, "Wow, this is a boys' town, and it really is." And you guys don't have the respect for women you should have, but it was changing. It was like in the 70s, and it's starting to change. And so to have her, when I first met her, it was so exciting. Her background and all. Now I want you to meet her. Miss Deanie Boy. Yay! And there's so much hollering and praise going around all over the world. And thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
I hadn't seen you in about 6 years.
It has been. It's been
yeah,
a while.
So I'm so excited to see you. And we had so much fun. We used to do the show Who Done It?
Who Done It?
Yeah,
exactly.
I had
that
you
was
and
so much fun.
You and Bob Berry would come on and do, clues about some kind of crime that that y'all had come across or he'd come across, and then we have to figure out who did it and who
The
was
clues that we
yes.
clues that we gave the audience,
Right.
they had the opportunity to take those clues and actually figure out who done it.
And Dennis Conner was wrong every time. So no, no. But I think that it was so much fun because I love that. I watch those movies all the time. And so and have a detective and real detectives and real people that have gone through the crime thing. It brought it to a different perspective that I had about it to listen to you guys talk. But it's terrible because the more gruesome the crime was, it was even more, it was just salacious. I'm sorry. I love that part of it. And it was all crimes that had happened and they were in the past. And so we weren't, trying to hurt anybody's feelings or
Right.
we didn't never said anybody's name or anything like that.
Right.
So anyway, it was a lot of fun during that time.
Yeah,
And
we
then
did have fun.
and I just loved having you on. Like when I hated Bob couldn't be there, it's a shame, but I had so much fun whenever you came on because you have just a totally different perspective than he would have of it. And so let me ask you, first of all, why in the world would you want to be a police officer in that department?
Well, I have to say, since the time I was like 17 years of age, I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. I didn't know in what capacity, but at the time, when I decided to apply, I thought, I really want to go to juvenile and work with the kids. And then after I got on to the department, I thought, no, I don't want to work with the juveniles.
I was thinking in my mind, I would not want that.
I would end up putting parents in jail instead of the kids.
Well, that probably could have worked out better that way. But I think that to have that kind of feeling and that urge to want to be that, was it the TV shows you watched, or was it the movies you saw, or was it somebody in your family that?
No, I had no one in my family. I had friends that were on the police department, and I received encouragement from them because at the time there was not a lot of females on the department back in the 70s. And most females, after they graduated the academy, they would go into the juvenile division or jail division. They weren't allowed to be on the streets. So when I came on, in 1979, I went through the academy. I graduated in March of 1990. So in 1990, I hit the streets, and there were very few of us. And the public even was astonished that there were female police officers. And I have to say, the women got the female police officers got more respect than the men did from the public.
Really?
Yeah,
Now,
because
see
they
that?
couldn't believe that. I mean, I'd have men that I would arrest, and they'd go, "They have women now to make arrests that are police officers?" He said, "Yes." So,
Were they so shocked that they didn't, throw up their hands and say, "You're not going to cuff me," or was it just because you had the gun to their head? What was?
sometimes both.
Oh my word! Because
My husband likes to tell the story of when we were riding together. He was my field training officer at the time, and we had a house that was on fire. We were actually on our way downtown to the main police station. I was driving the patrol car with a prisoner, and he was driving the prisoner's car, which was a DWI. But on the way, we saw a house on fire, and so we got off in the freeway and went to the fire, and a female had been blown out of the upstairs bedroom, and she was on the ground outside, and she was hollering, my kids, my kids." So we thought, oh my gosh, her kids are still upstairs. So my husband, who was not my husband at the time, my FTO, and I ran into the house, and he's running up the stairs, and there's fire above us. And I'm thinking, oh no, I can't do this. That's why we have firemen to do this.
Right.
So I stepped back outside, and about that time, I hear this loud banging noise, and the prisoner in my car broke out the window and was escaping. Now, he had his hands handcuffed behind his back. So I chased him down, and the only way I could get him down on the ground because he was not obeying is I just whacked him on the back of the head with my flashlight. So we both went down, and about that time, my FTO is walking out of the house, and he looks down the street and he sees me running on top of this guy's back, beating him on the head with this flashlight until he finally went down.
So he was still moving, and you're on his back, and you're hitting. Oh, that's great.
I may have been of only 110 pounds soaking wet. So.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
my husband said at the time, he goes, some bystander said, well, aren't you going to go help her? And he goes, nope, she's got it.
I love that. I love that story. You gotta write all those down, and and then let me see the book first, and
Yeah.
we'll do it. We'll do a promotion on it, because that's crazy.
And we didn't know that was going to be that I was going to be his future wife. And I didn't know he was going to be my future husband. And now he tells that my wife was running down the street beating this guy on the back of the head. So, excuse me, but we could do that back then.
That's exactly right. You were unfettered at that time. Did he bring the children down? Did he find the children?
There was no children upstairs, thank God. She had thought that her children were still up there. In fact, they were not in the house at all.
Oh, she was
She
kind of
had just, she panicked.
right.
And,
Well, being blown out of a house
Yeah.
that was on fire, I imagine.
So she was in shock.
Sure. Remember who she was. I think that those kind of experiences are just mind-boggling to me. And I think that you driving alone in North Shepherd, how did that come about?
Well,
By yourself?
that was a choice that I made. I had a partner for about a year, and our personalities began to clash. And I said, talked to my sergeant, and I said, I really just want to ride by myself.
Was it a male partner or a female?
Male partner.
It was a male partner.
And I was also a crime scene unit at the time, too, so I did a lot of crime scenes. Homicide would call, and I would make their crime scenes for them. So I did a lot of that as well. That I really enjoyed.
Well, that's what. Whenever you were on the show, we could tell you that you understood what you had to do and what needed to be, the details that you thought of. That's what I love, is that when you watch these movies and you try and figure out why they're making such a big deal about something, and you're like, okay, it must be that's what it is. So you try and figure out from a director's standpoint or the writer's standpoint. But you saw the real thing and what the clues were, and would have to look for everything.
Right.
So-
Gather evidence, take pictures. Very interesting.
And you had to take pictures of it.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point in your career did you stop having nightmares or dreams or, having to think about what you just did?
Well, early on in my career, and especially when I was a rookie going through the academy, I decided that I was not going to take my work home because there's so much evil in the world, and we always dealt with the majority of the people were the bad guys, was the evil side, and I didn't want to expose my family to it, even though at the time my husband was very sick and he'd had a heart transplant, and so I definitely didn't want to take it home to him.
Right. No stress.
Yes, no stress. So I pretty much, didn't share a lot when I went home, but enough to let him know that I'm okay, I'm safe.
Everything, yeah.
I do my job, and I make sure that I come home safe and my partner comes home safe.
that is just, I mean, on that, during that time when you were driving alone, what kind of episodes did you run into that kind of, did it ever scare you? Did you ever get scared about what could happen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you didn't, to me, if you didn't get scared or if you weren't frightened or worried, then you need to get out of the business.
Really?
Because you need to always stay on top of, the game, because you never know what that next person is that you're going to meet or run across. And from riding by myself one night, got a call at a bar. It was a bar fight, and I was right around the corner, and so I went ahead and took the call, and when I got there, a woman was being raped.
Oh, my word. In the bar?
In the bar parking lot. The bar had just closed. And she was being raped, and when I got out of the car, the rapist was pulling up his pants, and then he took off running. I took off running after him. And that good old flashlight came in handy again once I caught up to him. He was a little faster than me.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, how many flashlights did you go through?
Oh, no, it was a pretty sturdy flashlight.
Okay.
I still have it today.
You did? Oh, you ought to have, that should be a frame somewhere. And so after you waylaid him, so you have to go back to the woman, and does she want to press charges, or does she?
Well, she did it first, and what we found out later on, she decided not to, because she lives in the neighborhood. The guy that they had been in the bar, they had a few to drink and got a little frisky outside and got out of hand. And she refused to file charges because she knew everyone. And she didn't want the blowback. She didn't want the harassment
Yes,
and all that. And she had one leg, too. That really disturbed me, that she didn't want to file charges against him, but that was it was a cultural deal,
Well, if the person that raped you lives right down the street, and the family and everybody, all the kids play out that, and everybody, to bring charges against him, have him hauled off to jail, then everybody gets mad at you, which is not right. And especially in that time, the 70s, we didn't have, it's like we knew about this, and it wasn't always the woman's fault, but that was still really young. It didn't. Everybody never believed the woman at that point, and so for that to happen, you kind of understand culturally, and the time, why somebody wouldn't say anything about it.
Exactly.
But it seemed like she could put a flashlight out on front of her porch, and that would keep him away. Deanie Boy will be back. Yeah, that's right. Deanie will be back.
Exactly.
You better leave me alone. Oh man, that's amazing. But I think that if the fear factor leaves you once you see the emergency, and you guys run toward everybody else is running out trying to get as far away as they can, and you guys run toward it.
Yes.
That's an amazing, characteristic. And so can you explain that? Can you explain what happens and clicks off? And
I think it's just, training has a lot to do with it. And just knowing that you have a job to do to protect the citizens, that was my job. And we all ran towards it. Even today, my husband and I will see something, whether it be a car wreck or somebody getting into a fight or whatever. We're still police officers. After I've been gone 18 years, he's been gone 20 years, we still have that law enforcement in us, and we still run to stuff like that.
I think that's amazing.
I think it's confidence. It's just what's ingrained, and your training actually prepares you for it in a way. They give you the basics, but when you get out on the street, that's when you really learn how to be a police officer. Because then that's when you're applying.
You're putting into practice. Oh,
Your,
yeah.
And 85% of police work is police work, and the other part is just book work. You know,
Right.
You've got to have a lot of common sense. We had a female that graduated #1 in our class, but when she went on the street, she couldn't apply her common sense to the situation. She handled it book-wise, and it didn't.
It didn't work.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You've got to have a lot of common sense and street
Flexibility,
smarts.
being able to calm somebody down if you need to, or just to shoot them. I don't know what, like, to make the decision. If you're not going to calm, that's just what kills me is the people. Like, don't you understand? If you would just be calm, then this won't get out of hand. But they're so, the adrenaline's going and all that, and the police officers try to use all that patience and all that they can, and then it just, like, okay, I'm getting ready to lose control of you, this crowd that's videotaping everything we're doing, and all. And so now, did you have trouble with the press whenever you would, things would happen and you'd have to be the spokesperson, you'd have to talk to them, or they'd come up and ask you questions?
No, and actually back in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have the people with cameras and phones, and
Right.
and so you didn't have all of that you had to worry about. We didn't have mics on our
body cams. Yeah.
We didn't have that, and so I loved working with the news media because I got to learn the news people that were working that area or that would come on the scene, and it was like go home week. Hey, how are you doing? Back again. Our relationship with the news media back then was very good.
Oh, that's
We had a great
great.
working relationship.
Yeah, because now you see the kind of give and take and the struggle that they kind of go through. And I remember it seemed like when I'd watch the news every night during that time, 60s, 70s, it was just all about murders. It was all the most, the scariest things that were happening. And you thought that happened all the time. And it wasn't that, but it was just because you're watching TV, you watch this one channel, and that's what you think is happening all over the place. And I love that when they would finally talk to a police officer and get to know the police officer, and the police officer would do something so kind, and like, the person didn't have any food, and so they'd go to the grocery store, bring them back some food, and do that kind of stuff. That all of that isn't as announced as much as it should be. I wanted to do a campaign called the Heart Beneath the Badge, and about how, because police officers were getting such a bad rap, and I think Hollywood, TV, and everything has caused a lot of skepticisms. Yes,
Exactly.
about that, and that's always a shame. Like, good grief, you guys, and let them. That's not, everybody's not like that. And it's like this FBI thing that's come along, and we all, and they keep saying it's not everybody, it's not all the people in the field, and it's
Right.
not, it's not that. And there's a former FBI agent that goes to our church, and he said, it's so sad because I know the guys, I know, and they're having to take the brunt of what some, a leadership or a few other people
Right.
that are in charge of it. And that's a shame. And for my kids, I'd never let them say cop. They couldn't say cop. And my mother would never let us say cop. And so it was, pass that down. And they say, but they say it all the time on the movies and everything. And I said, but it's just respect. You just say officer, and that's what you need to say. Don't say cop. And they're like, okay, but I'm not afraid of the cops. I mean, the officers, I'm not afraid of them. And I said, you shouldn't be. You should respect them. And the respect, there's a fear comes with respect, like I don't want to make you mad. I want to make sure I give you all the information and not just make it worse. Because you've got to talk to them the way you want them to talk to you, and you've got to give them that. and they say, well, I don't know. I don't know how, if they came up and asked me a question, like, I don't think I could even answer the question. I'd be so scared because they'd do something. I said, that is TV. That you're basing a lot of how you feel.
Yeah.
And I mean, the conversations we had, I was so glad we had them because I didn't know that's how they were feeling about it. And I realized where they're getting all their information, TikTok or whatever it is, that that's not right.
Yeah, people believe the news media and the public more than actually what the police are really actually doing. And they're human too. They're going to make mistakes.
Right.
And, I can remember being on patrol and around Christmas time or New Year's, and you'd run across somebody that was possibly drinking and pull them over, and I would find out, well, where do you live? And they'd say, well, I just live around the corner. And I said, well, okay, you've got a choice. You can either let me take you home and tow your car, or we can tow your car and I can take you to jail. What is your choice?
I love that.
So their choice was, of course, I'll tow my car and you can take me home.
Right.
So, it's Christmas time. It's the holidays. We don't have to, I always, want to make a good impression, but also, hey, police are not all that bad.
Right, right.
And now can they do that? I don't know. But back then, we did it all the time. We would take people home that, really didn't, they just was out having a good time. It was the holidays, and some needed to go to jail.
Some of them did. Well, to me, though, a female, this petite, sweet, beautiful little female gets out of the car and comes around to talk to you. And was it the shock? Did the shock have a lot to do with it when they were going like, wait a minute, do I need to do what you say? You don't look like anybody I need to obey or anything like that. Did you have a hard time with that?
No, because when I initiated the investigation, I always was very stern, very upfront with them, and because I didn't want to you can't show any kind of weakness, because if you show weakness to someone that's, a criminal or whatever, they're going to take advantage of that.
Right.
So once you establish that authority that, okay, she means business, and I think a lot of times they really didn't know how bad I was.
That's right.
I had one gentleman get out of his car one night. I pulled him over for DWI. He had blood all over him. And so he got out, and he turned around and put his hands behind his back. And I said, well, okay, so why am I arresting you then? He goes, well, I've been drinking. I said, okay, I guess so. We need to take you in for that. But how did you get all this blood on you? And he said, well, I was in a bar fight. Well, okay. But he was so gracious enough, he said, okay, I'll put my hands behind my back. Now, this guy
hilarious.
was 6 foot tall.
Yeah. And the people that run from you have now figured out, don't do that. And I think that if you would tell me what would be the I guess the reaction of people, like you walked into Shipley's Donut, and not drawing that conclusion that you have to eat donuts, but if you walk in there, how do they respond to you? I mean, you're just walking in, you're just going to get some donuts, and do they talk to you? Do they ask you questions? Would they ask you questions?
Yeah, and a lot of the women thought it was really cool, especially the younger ones. They thought, oh, wow, when I grow up, I want to be a police officer, Because back then, again, when you saw a female on the street as a police officer, people didn't really know how to act, and they weren't really for sure about me being a little 100-pound female, how really bad I was going to be. So it was a lot of respect. And I think, too, back in that generation, men had respect for women.
Yes.
And they don't hit women. They were taught to never hit women.
Right.
And so I think a lot of that had a lot to do with it, too.
And I mean, and even though that went on, we know that women were getting battered and all that stuff during that time. But the majority and the society's view of it was you respect the woman and you don't do that. But if you ever worked in a situation where it's all men, the men in that were usually the worst, about not giving you respect or not wanting you to even be there, and it's not right for you to get what they're getting paid and all that stuff. And were the police officers that way, or were they mutually respectful to each other?
Well, I had to earn their respect because the majority of police officers back then didn't believe that women should be on the streets, that they could not handle it. And so I had to earn respect. I had to ride with a police officer one night, and we get in the patrol car. He's driving, and I'm shotgun, and he says, I'm going to tell you now, I don't want to ride with you. I didn't want to ride with you. I don't like females being on the police department. And I didn't say anything. I just said, okay. So we go about our shift, and during our shift, we got into a numerous amount of activity, let's just say.
Okay.
And a couple of fights we got into with criminals. And when we got back to the station that morning, he said, I'll ride with you anytime.
Oh, man.
And so we became really good friends. And,
that's awesome.
So after the officers saw what kind of person I was and what kind of police officer I was, because I didn't look at myself as a female, I looked at myself as a police officer.
Right.
Just like I looked at my male counterpart as a police officer. Just because I'm a female and you're a male doesn't mean that I can't do the same job that you can.
Right.
And so I had to prove that.
Well, I mean, okay, men are stronger and all that, but I think that I've seen a lot of officers that I'd go like, I could outrun that guy, because they're not physically fit enough to catch me. So when you come up against that would be like how a man sometimes would think like, well, I'm so much stronger than she is. She's not going to be able to hold me or all that. But you have the guns, and they, I guess the guns weren't as prevalent, that the criminals had the guns. Or did you surprise them, or did you find a lot of criminals had guns and you had to always be first on the draw or whatever?
Well, you always have to anticipate that they've got a gun on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's just in your training, and then your as you work the streets, you learn more and more what to look for. There's a person's personality and their demeanor says a lot about them.
Right.
So I could look at someone and say, okay, they're fixing to run on me. Or just their body language is going to tell me that they've got something on them. So those are just things that are learned, actually. And because the police, the academy doesn't teach you that. The streets teach you that. The criminals teach you that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to say, the whole time I was on patrol, that I've only had shot at once, and almost shot a teenager one time because he wanted to be a smarty pants and pretended like he had a gun behind his back.
Ooh.
While his buddy is fighting my partner in the front yard of a house with a knife, and this kid's I just knew I was going to have to shoot him. But finally, when he raised and put his hands up, he didn't have anything in his hands.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, thank you, Lord, you were on my side.
Oh my God. And on his side more than,
and on his
yeah,
side,
right.
too, because I come so close to shooting
Oh,
him.
man.
And I would have been devastated.
So
but his actions is what told me that my life was in danger.
Right. Well, did you ever shoot anyone?
No, thank goodness.
Oh, man. You got through all of that.
There's a lot of police officers that go through their career that never fire their gun at anyone. And then you've got some police officers that have fired their weapons many times.
Right.
And that's just the situations that they
Yeah,
get
because every
into.
situation
Yeah.
be different. Well, I was going to say this. I couldn't stand to see people fight. I mean, I could not growing up, teenager and then early 20s and all. I couldn't stand it. It just made me sick to my stomach to see people fighting. And I would be the one trying to break it up. When I was little, I would grab the person who was fighting, who started it, and I'd grab them by the neck and pull them down, and I'd get on top and I would start hitting them like, you stop this, like I was being a peacemaker. No, but anyway, and then as I got older, I'd drive in this neighborhood where there were a lot of kids that would they were going home, and they would always seem like they were fighting. And I remember I would drive up on the lawn where they're fighting, and all these kids are around them, and I'd honk my horn, and I'd drive up on the lawn between these kids, and everybody'd stand back, like, what is happening here? And I'd get out, and I'd say, you better stop that right now, you understand? I'll give you each $20, you stop fighting. And they go like, okay. Why I wasn't rolled, and they took my money. No, they didn't. But I would do that all the time, and a man would be hitting his wife, and I would pull over and she'd say, no, don't do anything, don't do anything. And he's hitting her. And I said, I'm going to call the police. No, don't call the police. It's just amazing. And I don't know how I get in these situations, but it was like maybe a year ago, this guy is coming out of the Dollar General, and he takes his hand and hits his wife, and I'm walking up and getting out of the car, and he hits her across the back of the front of her face, and it knocks her down, and she hits her head on the concrete, and I start screaming at him, and she stands up, and she gets in the car, and she's the one that's going to drive, and she's looking at me like, and I understand that she's feeling like the more I do, the more madder he's going to get. Like, Cindy, shut up, and so I said, do you want me to call the police? No. Are you sure? And I was going to follow them home, and the way she looked at me, though, I stopped and went like, okay, you just got to give it to them. This is what they do. And it bothered me so bad, and I was so mad at this guy. And it's like I want to carry a taser with me, but it does make me feel like calling the police and trying to get a policeman. You can't do it. You're out of the loop. She's got to do it, and if she doesn't care, and that's how she wants to live, then Cindy, you got to let her just back off. And my kids would tell me all the time. Every time we had one of these things, I saw somebody hit somebody, or they'd say, "Please don't say anything. Please don't say anything. Please, Grandma, don't say anything." And so I feel like what y'all feel, but you have the training, and you have the guns, and you have the, if it has to come to something like that you are trained to do that. Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you, because you know that the IRS application says if you want to be an IRS agent, you have to be ready to use a gun that we're going to issue you, and you have to be able to maybe take somebody down. Did you hear that story? Did you hear the story?
No, I've not heard that story.
They're hiring 87,000
Yeah.
IRS agents, and on the application they put it out in public. And then when the public saw that they were all going to be issued guns, they took that part down. And so, but somebody was saying, but they are officers. They're supposed to be like officers of the law, and so that they have to defend themselves, or they have to go in and take somebody's property or whatever they're going to do, they have to be able to use a gun. And I just thought the NRA must be so happy about this decision for them to have to buy 87,000 guns to hand over to IRS agents. So I didn't know if you had any kind of comment or what you thought about that.
Well,
let me say, with a 6 week training, 6 month training, 6 month training they're going to have. on this, and then they're going to put them out there.
Well, with the IRS, their probability of getting into a gunfight with someone that is laxed on their or have not paid their IRS bill or whatever the situation might be, they're probably not going to run across a lot of that. So I think now when you get into a fugitive detail like the marshals or
Yes,
that's a little different situation.
Well,
And backing up on what you were saying, how you get involved. Any police officer is going to tell you, don't do it.
Yes.
Just call 911 right away, because you don't know if that guy's got a gun.
Right.
And he's going to come out shooting you, shooting whoever's in the car. So.
But I think that click about running towards something
Right.
goes off, and I don't have any of the background, any of the backstory to be able to do that. But it makes you. But my mom always taught us to take care of somebody that's in trouble and do
Sure.
that. And so in that feeling like that, and that's why I appreciate the first responders so much.
Yes.
That's how I end every broadcast. Is we say, how much we love you, but God loves you even more, even more. And so that's like understanding. You guys do everything. You go out, and every day you don't know if you're going to come back, and it's gotten so horrible out there.
It has, and since I already know what police work is back in the 70s, 80s,
Right.
it's hard. It would be hard for me to be a police officer now, because, to me, my personal opinion, back in the 80s and 90s, we were allowed to be police officers.
Right.
And now it's so many supervisors and so many hoops they have to go through, and
The
and then
restrictions.
you've got the cameras, and you got people videoing, and it's his word against ours, and so there's just so much going on. You got the body cams.
Well, do you talk to police officers now? Do you still have friends and stuff? And do they talk about the body cams, or the body cams, something that they just wish would go away, or how they feel about them?
Well, I think the majority of them, the way society is now, it protects them. And if I was on patrol today and had a body cam, I'd use it to my advantage, of
Right.
course. And because it's going to show a lot. A body cam, pictures, you can't beat that. That's evidence. That's visual. When you don't have a camera, or you don't have a picture of the crime scene or what actually happened, it's but their word against yours, basically.
Right.
Now you've got a video, you've got pictures, so that tells the story.
I can't imagine. I know that there are a lot of police officers that are leaving the force,
Yes.
and that's horrible. I don't know how Conroe stands, with the police that are here, and if that's become a problem. But we don't seem to have the crime that they have, like in Houston and that. So I don't know. Have you heard? Is that a problem here?
I haven't heard so much in Conroe, but you know what? It's everywhere.
Yes.
It's just so out of control. Chicago's right behind Houston. I can remember back in the 80s, we may have 1 or 2 homicides a week. And on a full moon night, you may get 3 or 4.
Right, that's right.
But now...
That's true. Tell people that is so true, because when I worked at Channel 13 in the newsroom, and it's a full moon, and they say, "Here we go, guys, it's full moon, and get ready," and the calls start coming in, and it would just it's so true. And I went, "That's crazy. They can't." And I said, "No, it's true.
It is true.
Something happens in a full moon." But I'm sorry, what were you saying?
The full moon, you brought that up. I mean, the full moon is always, when we got ready to get in the patrol car and leave, I'd look, full moon tonight, here we go.
So that's been going on for a while. But I think it's so fascinating what you do and how you can handle it. And still, are there things that still bother you? Are you forgotten all that? Are you not forgotten it, but you've put that away and it doesn't bother you?
It really doesn't bother me, like, time, as they say,
Heals all.
Heals all. But, there's a lot of things that I remember still, things that I learned from. I have to say, the thing that bothers me the most out of everything that I ever did in my whole career was I gave a little woman, an 85-year-old woman, a ticket for turning the wrong way. And her daughter came up to me while I was writing the ticket, and I kind of was forced to write it because I had an FDO. I was still a rookie.
Oh dear.
And I could have said, here's your driver's license, be more careful. But I wrote her the ticket, and I tell you, to this day, I still feel so bad about
You got
writing
such a
her.
heart.
I don't care about any of the other ones, but she's the one that bothered me the most.
Oh, but,
Of course,
well,
she's probably not alive now, but
no, and hopefully at 86 she didn't remember it. But anyway,
Yeah.
So that's how I would be now. But I think that if things like that come back to you, what a big heart you have. But all the criminals and the elements of criminals, and judging someone has, we're told not to judge, don't judge people, but you have to have an instinct about that and have to be, when someone approaches you or you approach someone else. Since you've retired, have you had any kind of contact with criminals that that came up to you or that's tried to, take your purse or try to do anything?
Well, not really per se. My husband and I were, there's a school next door to us, and we had our motorcycles over there, and we were just practicing or whatever. And there was 2 burglars, 2 kids, jumped down off of the school building. And so we went right into action. We knew what they were doing, and we were retired. It's like second nature. This happened maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Did he have his gun? Did
He didn't
your husband
have
have his gun?
We
Okay.
always
You always
we
have your-
always
okay.
have guns, and we arrested him and called police
That's-
security or the police for that school district.
Uh-huh.
But once a police officer, you're always a police officer.
That's what I would think, that would be, like you just go right into action. And that's what you did. I love that. I love that about you. Now, I wanted you to be able to tell about what you and your husband are involved in right now, the Thin Blue Line.
We ride with the Thin Blue Line Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club, and it is the largest law enforcement motorcycle club in the state of Texas, but we're an international club. So we have chapters in Australia, and then,
Wow.
of course, Hawaii is U.S., but the majority of our chapters are in Texas. We have them in Louisiana, Florida, New York, Pennsylvania. I mean, we just have Alabama, Arkansas. So we have chapters all over. But my position with the organization is twofold. I'm the treasurer of the Thin Blue Line Foundation, and my husband is the vice president. And then on the law enforcement motorcycle side of it, he is what's called a senior road captain. So he teaches all the road captains how to get from point A to point B in a safe mode when we're riding motorcycles in groups. Our function, and let me get back to my position with him, is called assist the officer. And my position was created when we lost 3 or 4 of our members in Bandera back in 2020, July the 18th, 2020, we had a group that was every year we have a birthday party, and we have it in Bandera, Texas. So there's 400 or 500 of us that show up.
They're right into Bandera. I know Bandera very well, and so you guys ride up. They know you're coming, right? They
Yes.
know. And so they don't think the Hells Angels have arrived or anything. Okay.
And the cuts they call them cuts, the colors that we wear is the tools of our trade. So it's obviously, you can tell that we're law enforcement. Now, we do have civilians within our group that support our profession, but the majority of us are law enforcement. And there's over 1,000 of us. But my position was created when we were in Bandera, and a group went out for a motorcycle ride. There's probably 30 of them. And what was really strange that day, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because it was just really bizarre. 2 weeks prior to that, my husband said, I really don't feel good about going on this ride, because what they were going to do is they were going to go to a museum, then they were going to go have lunch and stop at few other places, and then come back to Bandera because we had a convention that night. And that morning, during the briefing, my husband came up to me and he said, Deanie, he says, you need to get out of line, move your bike out of line, because we're not going to go on the ride. And I said, why? And he goes, because there's just something about the ride that I don't feel comfortable with. I said, okay. And at the time I was Spec Ops, and Spec Ops rides to the back because I'm the first line medical until EMS gets there if anything happened. So I got out of line. There was 15 of us that did not go on the ride. We went elsewhere. So we were 71 miles out of Bandera, and we had gotten the word that there was a terrible accident, and 3 of our guys were killed immediately from a drunk driver. Oh, and right. The 4th one ultimately died about 3 or 4 days later from his injuries. So from that, they created Assist the Officer, and what I do is I took care of the families, helped them. 3 of the guys were from Chicago, and our other guy was from Alvin, Texas, and so I helped with the families, assist with their funerals, and I was kind of like the liaison between Thin Blue Line and these families. And so now my position is permanent, and I look after people that are sick within our group, if we have a death in our membership. And then there are 8 ATOs, we call them ATOs, Assist the Officer, that I manage now because we have so many people. So we're like one huge family, and in a huge family, you have people that get sick, that that need financial assistance, and so our mission statement for Thin Blue Line is we help our first responders, we help law enforcement if they're killed in the line of duty, we help their families financially, emotionally, we raise monies for this specifically. So we do a lot of benefits throughout the year.
If someone wants to, can they go online and donate?
Yes. They can go to thethinbluelinefoundation.org. Now, if you go to thinbluelinefoundation.com, you're going to find some totally different organization. But we're under thethinbluelinefoundation.org.
Okay.
And then our law enforcement group is under Thin Blue Line Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club. And so...
Well, I certainly, what a great thing to be able to do and have the officers together as a family and take care of each other.
Yeah.
But, Deanie, thank you so much. It's gone. An hour is gone.
Are you serious?
No.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. I was just getting warmed up. But Deanie Boy, we just appreciate you, honor you. Thank you for your service and
Thank
still
you.
serving. You're still serving. You have such a servant's heart. And Jim, gosh, you're so lucky that you have this woman as your wife. And so anyway, I just want to thank you, and you'll have to come back. We have to figure out something that we can do the whodunit or something again,
yes,
okay?
Absolutely.
Oh, yay. Listen, tomorrow is going to be Don Nelson's from Channel 13. Don Nelson will be here, and he's going to talk about how 13, how it was back in the 70s, way back in the 70s. But we'll be talking to him tomorrow, and it's going to be so much fun. He is crazy, like talking to Rob Williams. It's just, oh my goodness, Robin Williams, he's just all over the place. So I'm going to try and tame him, into talking about what's good. All right, listen, you guys be back with us. And first responders, we love you, and